let's learn everything we need to know about Claude Code as if you've never developed in your entire life. And the best part is that I'm not only going to show you how to use Claude Code, but also a bunch of cool tools that will really expedite your workflow. So if that all sounds good, let's jump in. Welcome back, y'all. Today's video is sponsored by Zapier, and they said, Corbin, we need to show how to use Claude Code. And I said, I got you. This is going to allow you to build anything now, y'all. And if you've never coded in your entire life, it doesn't even matter. You just fundamentally need to understand this user interface. So first things first, obviously get Claude, right? What you need to understand about Claude Code and typically how these coding agents work is that we need to store all this information somewhere. This is very simple, y'all. And essentially when building an application or dealing with software, it needs a home, which will literally just be a folder. I'm not joking, y'all. All the code that's written, all its execution, when you see the UI, localhost, like everything, it's just a folder, y'all. So that's fundamental ground zero for you to understand. Therefore, let's create the folder. We're going to simply hit this little icon here. We'll hit new folder and call it my dash and hit open. So we have the folder selected here, but what on earth is going on over here? A couple of things. First thing, these are past projects I have. So techsniff.com, for example, is a real website that I currently develop. Local means that any file that's on your computer where you don't have to connect to the internet and it's just there, right? Like you right click and you create a text file. It's just there. It's not in the cloud. You'll notice other options here, such as cloud, remote control, SSH, cloud, which I'm sure you're familiar with. Think of like Google Drive. This is files in the cloud that it can access and edit. One you're very familiar with is GitHub. And that's where trees come into play and all of this information about trees. But for right now, you don't have to care about that. Let's go ahead and just start by creating your application. But before I do that, I need to change some settings here. The first one we're going to talk about here is mode. Now, what mode does is different levels of permissions of what we give Claude to do, which to put simply is the human barrier, you yourself, where I am about to rename this file. Can I do it? That situation, we have different levels of permissions where we can just do auto that allows Claude to do it automatically for us. Play around with this, but personally, I usually just always go with like auto and bypass permissions because the models are so good now that it's extremely reliable. So I'm gonna hit auto, enable auto mode. Next, the model. So we have two options here. You'll notice that you have the actual model name, and then over here is high. In developer terms, reasoning effort. As you can assume, the lower it is, like the faster it will do a task, but maybe less quality on output. And then alternatively, the higher it is, the better the output it is for the code, the slower it takes, and could be more inducive on your actual usage, which I'm sure you're familiar with, like tokens and everything of that nature. General rule of thumb, and I've ran benchmarks here, is that you'll basically be good with high. Anytime you're doing something extremely complex, or maybe you really want to make sure you do it right the first time, I would opt for smarter. But when you're iterating and creating software and coding, most of the time, the reasoning effort of high is sufficient. The real thing that comes into play is the actual model itself. I'm sure you're familiar with this, and you already know that like OpenAI has its own model tree of like GPT Soul, GPT Terra, like that situation. So does Claude, so does Anthropic, so does Gemini, so does Google. They usually have a class set of 3 levels of models. You'll have your very small one, like Haiku. Will you use this when you code? Probably not, and you shouldn't, right? We're talking like 2 years ago type of code outputs. The ones you're going to be opting for realistically is going to be between Sonnet, Opus, and Fable. If you have money to spend and you're like, Corbin, I need this done right. I'm sick and tired of just hiring someone for this information. Go with Fable 5. Is this more cost inducive? Yes. Will you get real code that works every single time? Yes. It's the trade-off. In reality, a happy middle is Opus 5. So I'm gonna click Opus 5. So we set our model, we set our reasoning effort, and at any time you're coding and it's becoming extremely frustrating, set that model to Fable 5 max, and I guarantee you it will fix it. But you obviously don't want it's like, when you're riding a car, you don't always want to be in turbo and you're just like revving the engine. You don't have to rev the engine if you're just simply changing the color of a landing page. Do you need to rev the engine if you've never done Stripe monetization integration before? Maybe a little. So this has all been set. Let's begin with a prompt. What I want to show today is we're going to build an internal application that integrates with third-party applications. Oh my gosh, he's speaking all crazy. Basically, we're going to create a dashboard that connects to my Gmail, my Google Calendar, and then any other type of application I would want to see information for in a nice native dashboard that I can edit. So here's a prompt. Build me a morning brief dashboard in Next.js. That's just a language. In theory, you could just delete this. You don't need to. Theory panels, today's calendar events, unread emails, my task list, use realistic mock data for all 3 now, dark, clean design with a name and today's date at the top, then run it so I can open my browser. A couple things here. Numero uno, mock data. dummy data. Use this. In application development and when coding, you don't always want to deal with the annoying parts of like, oh shoot, I want to see this would actually work with like a Gmail integration. In reality, you can create mock data sets, or I like to call them dummy data sets, where it will just create dummy emails that don't exist, but the data itself is formatted like it would come in from Gmail. This is extremely valuable. This allows for a thing called E2E testing, end-to-end. E2E testing is something that us developers used to have to do, and it was extremely annoying. We'd have to launch up the emulator in localhost 3000, play around with the buttons, make sure a button did an action that was supposed to, e.g., make an AI reply to this email, like click the button. Is it doing it? Right now, the models are so good, and that seems like a reoccurring topic in these videos now, is that an E2E test allows it so that the model actually is the one that clicks through and does all the application and then returns with a report of like, yeah, it works, yeah, it doesn't. Now, before we attack this, let's go ahead and actually switch from auto to plan mode as we want to plan this. I'm gonna hit enter. And before we actually do that, I hit enter in TextSniff. We don't want to do this in TextSniff. So make sure when setting up the folder, set it here. And if you see just your folder, my dash, that's what I called it, or whatever yours is named, enter. And you'll notice it's up here. And what you're realizing is that every single piece of work and code files that are made will be found in that specific folder, y'all. So Claude has gone the extra 20 miles as well to actually have the preview of our application here. So if I come up to the top right, click the browser, you'll notice it's going to show up here as well, which is nice, right? We can test here, code here, proceed. It looks like while I was searching my directories, it found my GitHub candle, which is coffee fuel, but I love coffee. I'm just going to go with Corbin. Corbin's fine. You can call me Corbin. And then it's just going to ask, should the panels be interactive or read-only display? We're going to say interactive. That right there is the sauce and the magic of plan mode, which again, anytime you're building something, especially from zero or building out a new feature set or building out a new concept, use plan mode. Because then you're going to get these question and answer back and forth, which then allows you to simply give input on exactly how you want it to look. We're going to let this cook. So once it's done making a plan, you'll be able to read it over here. You can kind of look through this. If you don't know what any of this means, you can always ask a Claude chat like, what the heck does npx create next app? Like, what does this mean? Situation. For now, I'm going to say accept and auto mode. I encourage you to do auto mode as well. These models are just amazing now. So we're going to go ahead and let it proceed, cook up this code. And let's see the first initial product here. So here we go. It took around 7 minutes. You'll notice that these generations take a little bit of time. But to be honest with y'all, in the past, it used to be done in like 30 seconds, but it was trash. But now it's actually good, as you can see over here. You'll also notice that when it loads in, you might be like, well, Corbin, this is like a really weird iPad level user interface. You can just grab this link, go to any browser, Chrome, Safari, and then you can load in that URL and see it all here. This is a pretty good start, y'all. And this is an example of dummy / mock data that I was talking about. Like, this is all fake. This is not real. But what it allows you to do is to visually see like what is going on, whether it is the Gmail inbox, today's schedule on the calendar, the task, like I click this, what happens? If I click this, what happens? Or boom, boom, it goes back and forth, right? So once you're satisfied with the user interface or this looks good, this is when you can start loading in real data. So you see from this example, we have the Google Calendar, Gmail, and then just a task list. I mean, what's really cool here is essentially what's happening is that it's taking the data from my calendar, the Gmail, and then making a task list associated with that based off what is found here. So then now that we have a user interface that works, how do we get the backend involved here? How do we get real data and make it super simple? This is when something like Zapier SDK comes into play. SDK just means software development kit, or to put simply, this is code we can add to these files that then allows us to access real data very simply, such as Gmail, HubSpot, Slack. I mean, if you're familiar with Zapier, they have over 9,000 integrations. I'll make sure to leave a link in the description down below. First link, check it out, click it, completely free to start. So the integration that I'm going to show today that we should care about is my Google Calendar integration. You can see it right here. I have contact@webcafeai.com. If you're like, well, Corbin, I want to integrate Jira, you simply hit create connection here, search your app, and you can simply connect it via this. Hit Jira, Jira Software Cloud, click and proceed. So here's the big technical debt that you don't have to deal with that Zapier handles when it comes to accessing this data. It's something called OAuth, authentication. This is a ton of security code that you would have to build from zero in order to confirm that you own that Gmail account to do certain actions in it. But what Zapier does is a simple click, click, click integration, rather than the nuance that's associated with creating a real OAuth connection in any application. And as you can imagine, especially if you're vibe coding, security is a pretty big thing, because I think that's like one of the biggest pitfalls any vibe coder goes through when setting up credentials like this. So to connect it, it's pretty simple. First, I'll leave in the description down below. This is from the docs of Zapier SDK. It's all this information right here, and you can simply just double click it, copy, and paste into your chat. The AI can scrape all of this information and then know end-to-end how to use Zapier SDK. And then you would do a prompt like this. Replace my calendar panel with my real Google Calendar events for today using Zapier SDK. Keep the other two panels as mock data. So it knows which one. I'm going to provide the email and then hit enter and watch the magic. So the first thing it's going to do is simply install the Zapier SDK into this folder. And then once it's installed, you may have to go through an authentication process. We'll open up a new tab in your browser and be like, hey, do you want to make a connection? You'll say yes. And then once you say yes, we're going to create a secure tunnel here that's going to update the today schedule here with real data. So right now, for example, you look up here, you see like lunch Theo. But lunch Theo doesn't show up in my real calendar events, where you can see here things like 3 p.m. call for thumbnail designer or today record video. Everything of this nature is going to show up as real data now into my application once this tunnel has been created. So it looks like it works now. As you'll notice, for today's schedule, we have things like partner call at 12:30 p.m. If I come over to the actual calendar, you'll see it right here. I went ahead and did a follow-up prompt here so that not only can I see today's schedule, but also just a full calendar view. So it's building that out right now. In the meantime, while it's building that out, let me give you some other tips. The first major one, you might find yourself when you're coding for very long sessions, wanting the ability to maybe roll back to a version or maybe put out some code and you're like, this is trash. How do I handle that? This is what we call version control. And the way you handle this is a free software called GitHub. I'll leave in the description down below. It's like in 10 minutes, I show you how to use this. Think of this like having multiple versions of your application and the ability to roll back if the AI code is no good. In addition, now that we have Zapier SDK installed, I can start a new chat by hitting the plus here and see what else it can integrate with by simply asking Zapier SDK installed, what else can we integrate with? And it should give me a list here, which is also another unlock. You're realizing you can run parallel agents for very specific tasks. So while one chat is creating the new calendar view, this chat is answering a very specific question of mine. Sometimes you'll be prompted whether it can do a command. I know this is a reliable command, so always allow. So if that command, it went ahead and found everything that's currently integrated onto my Zapier account, such as YouTube, MailChimp, Klaviyo, Buffer. Pretty cool stuff, right? And these are one-on-one integrations with any type of application you create internally. Going back to my other chat here, you'll notice that it finally finished our open view of our calendar. So if I come over to the rendering, I hit the expand option here. There we go. These are the actual events, such as on the 13th, record video, and boom. 13th record video. So there you go. That's base level, how you create a real application within Claude Code, but then also add the integration of third-party applications to get real data and play around with it. So if everything looks good, make sure you leave a like, and I'll see you in the next Did Corn quite literally just show how to use Claude Code to build absolutely anything type of video?